The Galactic Academy had one rule. Every cadet, no matter what species they came from, had to prove they deserved to wear the Academy's silver crest. Only the strongest graduated. Only the smartest survived. And only legends became commanders. Thousands of young warriors arrived there every year. Some came from planets covered in oceans. Some came from worlds where gravity was 5 times stronger than Earth's. Others belonged to ancient warrior races that had ruled entire star systems for centuries. There was only one human. His name was Ethan Ryder. The moment he walked through the Academy gates, every eye turned toward him. Some looked curious. Most looked amused. A few looked disgusted. One tall alien with dark blue skin folded all 4 of his arms and laughed. "So that's a human? They're even smaller than the reports." Another cadet shook his head. "I heard humans lose wars before they even begin." Laughter spread through the enormous training hall. Ethan heard every word. He said nothing. He simply adjusted the small Earth flag stitched onto his uniform and kept walking. He had expected this. Earth had only joined the Galactic Alliance 12 years earlier. Compared to civilizations that had explored space for thousands of years, humans were children. Or at least, that was what everyone believed. The Academy was unlike anything Ethan had ever imagined. Floating islands drifted above endless training fields. Massive combat arenas changed shape every morning. Gravity shifted without warning. Robotic instructors fired live energy rounds during exercises. There were no easy lessons. Every mistake hurt. Every failure was remembered. The Academy existed for one purpose: to create the greatest warriors in the galaxy. And humans had never graduated. Not once. 3 months passed. Every morning began before sunrise. Every night ended long after the stars appeared. Ethan trained harder than anyone else. When gravity increased, he kept running. When others collapsed, he kept standing. When his hands bled, he wrapped them and trained again. But no matter how hard he worked, the whispers never stopped. The human is too weak. He doesn't belong here. He's wasting everyone's time. Some instructors ignored him completely. Others openly mocked him. None more than Commander Vorik. Commander Vorik was feared throughout the Academy. He belonged to the Karen Dominion, a warrior race famous for conquering entire civilizations. He stood nearly 9 feet tall. Dark crimson armor covered his body. A long scar crossed one glowing amber eye. Nobody had ever seen him smile, except whenever Ethan failed. One afternoon, the cadets gathered for close combat training. Pairs entered the arena. Victory earned respect. Defeat meant humiliation. When Ethan's name appeared, the crowd immediately became excited. His opponent stepped forward. Brack, a mountain-like alien from the stone world of Gorath. He was nearly twice Ethan's height. His fists looked larger than Ethan's head. Several cadets began placing bets. 30 seconds. No. 20. Commander Vorik crossed his arms. Begin. Brack charged forward with terrifying speed. The ground cracked beneath his feet. Ethan barely rolled away before the massive fist smashed into the floor. The impact sent pieces of metal flying across the arena. Gasps echoed around the room. Ethan stayed calm. He watched. He waited. Brack attacked again. Then again. Every strike carried enough force to break bones. But Ethan never met strength with strength. He kept moving, dodging, learning, looking for a weakness. Brack became impatient. He roared and threw everything into one final punch. That was the moment Ethan had been waiting for. He stepped aside, used Brack's own momentum against him. And with one precise movement, the giant lost his balance. He crashed face-first into the arena floor. Silence. The entire hall froze. Brack wasn't defeated, but the human had outsmarted him. For the first time, nobody laughed. Commander Vorik slowly walked into the arena. His expression remained cold. "You survived." Ethan nodded. "Yes, sir." Vorik leaned closer. "But surviving isn't winning." Without warning, he struck Ethan across the face with the back of his arm. The blow sent Ethan sliding across the metal floor. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Several cadets looked shocked. No one moved. Vorik looked down at him. Remember your place. You are here because the Alliance demanded diversity, not because your species deserves respect. The words echoed through the arena. Ethan slowly stood. His cheek burned. His vision blurred. But he refused to lower his eyes. I'll earn that respect. The room became completely silent. Vorik stared at him for several long seconds. Then, something unexpected happened. He smiled. It wasn't the smile of a teacher. It was the smile of someone who had just made a terrible decision. That evening, an emergency announcement echoed across the academy. All cadets report to Central Assembly Hall immediately. Thousands of students filled the enormous chamber. The ceiling displayed a rotating map of the galaxy. Commander Vorik stepped onto the platform. Behind him stood the Academy's highest officers. No one spoke. Vorik activated a hologram. An enormous forest appeared. Dark mountains, ancient ruins, glowing rivers. Then, the image zoomed toward a single region covered in thick black mist. Even the veteran instructors looked uneasy. A whisper spread through the crowd. No! It can't be! One cadet quietly stepped backwards. Another lowered his head. Ethan noticed something strange. For the first time, every alien looked afraid. Vorik's voice echoed through the hall. For centuries, this territory has remained forbidden. It belongs to a species that refuses all contact with the Galactic Alliance. The elite hunters. The hologram changed. Towering figures appeared. 8 feet tall, covered in natural bone armor. Golden eyes. Long cloaks woven from the hides of giant beasts. Each carried a spear unlike any weapon Ethan had ever seen. No medals. No machines. No fear. Only absolute silence. Vorik continued. They have never accepted outsiders. They have never surrendered. And no one sent into their territory has ever returned. The hall became deathly quiet. Then Vorik turned. His glowing eyes locked onto Ethan. The human cadet Ethan Ryder. You have complained that this academy has not given you a chance to prove yourself. A slow smile spread across his face. So tomorrow, you will receive your final examination. Every cadet stared at Ethan. Someone whispered, "No." Another quietly muttered, "He's dead." Vorik raised one hand. You will enter the Valley of the Elite Hunters. You will survive for 72 hours. If you return, you graduate. If not, he paused just long enough for the silence to become unbearable. The Academy will consider your mission complete. No one applauded. No one spoke. Everyone understood what this really was. It wasn't an examination. It was an execution. Late that night, Ethan stood alone outside the academy. Above him, countless stars filled the sky. He looked at the small Earth flag on his shoulder. Then toward the distant mountains shown on the hologram. He took a slow breath. If this is how my story ends, then I'll make sure they remember humanity. Far away, beyond the academy walls, deep inside an ancient forest, a pair of glowing golden eyes opened in the darkness. Then another, and another. Dozens of silent figures watched the stars, as if they already knew. The human was coming. The transport shuttle flew through thick black clouds. No one spoke. No one looked at Ethan. Even the pilot kept his eyes fixed on the controls. Outside the window, the Valley of the Elite Hunters slowly appeared. It looked nothing like the peaceful forests shown in the Academy's holograms. This place was alive. Mountains stretched like giant claws toward the sky. Ancient trees rose hundreds of feet into the air. Blue mist drifted between massive roots. Strange creatures moved beneath the leaves. Some had glowing horns. Others had far too many eyes. Nothing looked friendly. Nothing looked safe. The pilot finally broke the silence. I've flown soldiers here before. His voice was quiet. I never flew anyone back. Ethan looked out the window. What happened to them? The pilot swallowed. No one knows. The shuttle landed on a lonely stone platform. There were no buildings, no roads, only endless jungle. The rear door slowly opened. Warm air rushed inside. Smelled of rain, fresh earth, and something wild. The pilot handed Ethan a small survival pack. One knife, one water filter, a basic medical kit, 3 emergency food packs. No blaster, no communicator, no tracking beacon. Ethan frowned. That's all. The pilot nodded. The hunters destroy advanced technology. They believe warriors should survive with skill. Ethan looked toward the dark forest. So I'm completely alone. The pilot didn't answer. He simply stepped back into the shuttle. The engines roared. Within seconds, the aircraft disappeared into the clouds. The silence became overwhelming. Ethan was truly alone. He adjusted his backpack, then took his first step into the valley. The forest immediately swallowed him. Sunlight barely reached the ground. Massive vines hung from ancient branches. Bright insects floated through the air like tiny stars. Some flowers glowed with soft blue light. Others snapped shut whenever he walked past them. Every sound felt close. Every shadow seemed to move. Hours passed. Ethan carefully followed a narrow animal trail. He remembered his academy survival lessons. Never waste energy. Always observe before acting. And never assume you're alone. Suddenly, the forest became quiet. Too quiet. No birds. No insects. No wind. Ethan slowly stopped walking. His heartbeat grew louder. Crunch. A branch broke somewhere behind him. He turned. Nothing. Another sound came from the left. Then the right. Then directly ahead. Something was circling him. He slowly pulled out his survival knife. His breathing remained steady. The trees around him seemed to close in. Then, a pair of glowing golden eyes appeared between the bushes. Another pair. Then another. Within seconds, more than 20 pairs of glowing eyes surrounded him. None of them blinked. None of them moved. They simply watched. Ethan realized something terrifying. They had surrounded him without making a sound. One enormous figure stepped out of the darkness. He stood nearly 8 feet tall. Natural bone armor covered his shoulders and chest. Long silver markings crossed his dark skin. A massive spear rested calmly in one hand. His golden eyes studied Ethan without emotion. Behind him, the other hunters slowly emerged. Every movement was perfectly controlled. No wasted motion. No nervousness. No anger. Only discipline. Ethan understood immediately. These weren't savage beasts. They were professional warriors. The giant hunter spoke. His deep voice echoed through the forest. You are human. It wasn't a question. Ethan nodded. Yes. The hunter looked him up and down. You carry no army. No machines. No fear. Ethan answered honestly. I only came because I was ordered to. Silence. The hunters exchanged quick glances. The leader stepped closer. My name is Kaler. I lead this tribe. He pointed his spear toward Ethan. Why should we allow you to live? Ethan could have lied. He could have begged. Instead, he answered with the truth. I don't know. But if you decide to kill me, I won't run. Several hunters tightened their grip on their weapons. One of them growled. Kaler remained perfectly still. Then, he slowly lowered his spear. Interesting. No outsider had ever answered like that. Before anyone could speak again, a loud scream echoed through the valley. It wasn't human. It came from deeper inside the jungle. The hunters instantly turned. Kaler shouted a single word. Every warrior began running. Without hesitation, Ethan followed. They sprinted through thick vines and giant roots. Soon they reached a rocky clearing. A young hunter lay on the ground. His breathing was weak. Purple veins spread across his arm. A massive beast stood nearby. Its body resembled a giant panther mixed with an insect. 6 glowing eyes. Long venom-covered claws. The creature hissed loudly. One wounded hunter tried to stand. He collapsed immediately. The poison was spreading fast. Kaler raised his spear. Before he could attack, the beast charged. Everything happened in seconds. Ethan grabbed a burning tree branch from an old campfire. He shouted as loudly as he could. "Hey!" The monster instantly turned toward him. Its 6 glowing eyes locked onto the human. Instead of attacking the wounded hunter, charged Ethan. Exactly what he wanted. The beast was incredibly fast. Ethan barely dodged its claws. The burning branch struck its face. The creature screamed and jumped backward. Fire. Feared fire. Ethan noticed the reaction immediately. He grabbed another burning branch. Then another. Using both hands, he forced the beast away from the wounded hunter. The creature circled him, looking for an opening. Ethan refused to panic. He waited. The monster lunged again. This time, Ethan threw one burning branch directly into its open mouth. The beast roared in pain. Kaler saw the opening. His spear flew through the air, straight into the creature's neck. The monster crashed to the ground. The forest became silent once more. Ethan quickly knelt beside the injured hunter. The purple poison had almost reached his chest. Academy medical training flashed through his mind. He opened his medical kit. One injector remained. Only one. It was designed for unknown toxins. Using it meant he would have nothing left for himself. He didn't hesitate. He injected the medicine. Several hunters stepped forward. One grabbed Ethan's wrist. "What are you doing?" "Saving him." The hunter looked confused. "Why?" Ethan stared at the unconscious young warrior. "Because if I don't, he dies." The medicine slowly began working. The purple veins stopped spreading. The young hunter took a deep breath. His eyes opened. He was alive. None of the hunters spoke. They simply stared at Ethan. Kaler slowly walked over. "You used your only medicine." "Yes. You may need it later." "I know. You could die because of this." Ethan smiled tiredly. "Maybe. But at least he won't." For the first time, Kaler's expression changed. Not surprise. Respect. He turned toward his warriors, then spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "The human protected one of our own. Without asking for anything." He looked back at Ethan. "In all our history, no outsider has ever done that." Kaler raised his spear into the air. "The human will not be hunted." A ripple of surprise spread through the tribe. One older hunter stepped forward. "He is still an outsider." Kaler nodded. "Yes. But today, he acted like one of us." The old hunter lowered his head. No one argued again. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, the hunters led Ethan through the forest. Hours later, the trees opened into a hidden valley. Ethan stopped in amazement. Hidden among giant cliffs stood an entire city. Homes were carved into ancient trees. Stone bridges connected glowing waterfalls. Children trained with wooden spears while elders crafted armor from enormous beast bones. It wasn't a camp. It was a civilization. One the galaxy had never truly known. Kaler stood beside Ethan. "You expected monsters." Ethan nodded slowly. "I did." Kaler looked toward his people. "The galaxy always does." He pointed toward the largest stone hall. "You will stay here tonight. You are our guest." Ethan smiled. "Thank you." Kaler looked at him carefully. "No, it is we who must thank you." Far above the valley, hidden behind dark clouds, a tiny surveillance drone watched everything. Its red sensor flashed once, then transmitted a single encrypted message across space. "Mission update. Human cadet. Alive. Contact with elite hunters. Successful. Phase 2 of Operation Iron Fang has begun." Back at the Galactic Academy, Commander Vorik watched the transmission. A slow smile spread across his face. "Perfect. They've accepted him." One officer looked confused. "Isn't that good?" Vorik quietly shook his head. "No. It is exactly what I wanted." He turned toward a giant holographic star map. "Prepare the invasion fleet. We finally have our excuse." Morning came quietly. No alarms. No academy announcements. No instructors shouting orders. Only birds. wind through ancient trees, and the distant sound of waterfalls. Ethan slowly opened his eyes. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he noticed the wooden ceiling above him. The room had been carved inside a living tree. Sunlight entered through long openings in the walls. Fresh herbs hung from the ceiling. Someone had cleaned and repaired his torn uniform. His knife rested neatly beside his bed. Nothing had been stolen. No one had touched his belongings. A soft voice came from outside. "You are awake." Ethan stepped outside. Kaler was waiting. Behind him stood the young hunter Ethan had saved. The warrior looked much younger in daylight, perhaps 19 by human standards. His golden eyes were full of gratitude. He placed one fist over his heart. "My name is Rin. You saved my life." Ethan smiled. "I'm glad you're all right." Rin looked confused. "You don't even know me." Ethan shrugged. "I didn't need to." For several seconds, the young hunter simply stared at him. Then, for the first time in many years, Rin smiled. Life inside the hunter village was nothing like the rest of the galaxy imagined. There were no slaves, no rulers sitting on golden thrones. No one shouted orders. Every warrior worked. Even Kaler carried heavy stone blocks beside the youngest hunters. Children learned to hunt. Elders taught history. Everyone protected everyone. Strength wasn't used to control others. It was used to protect them. Ethan watched everything carefully. The more he learned, the more he realized the hunters weren't savages. They were one of the most disciplined civilizations he had ever seen. That afternoon, Kaler handed Ethan a simple wooden spear. No machines. No blasters. No shields. Only skill. Ethan looked at the weapon. "I've never used one." Kaler nodded. "Good. Then you have no bad habits." The surrounding hunters quietly chuckled. Training began immediately. For hours, Kaler attacked without warning. Again, again, again. Every strike knocked Ethan onto the ground. His arms ached. His shoulders burned. His hands became covered in blisters. Every time he stood, Kaler struck him down again. Rin finally stepped forward. "Leader." "He cannot continue." Kaler looked at Ethan. The human was breathing heavily. Sweat covered his face. His legs shook with exhaustion. Then, slowly, he stood up again. Kaler lowered his spear. "There. He has learned the first lesson." Ethan frowned. "I haven't learned anything." Kaler smiled slightly. "You learned to stand." Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. The academy had taught Ethan how to fight. The hunters taught him how to survive. He learned which plants healed wounds, which rivers were safe to drink from, which sounds meant danger, which silence meant something was hunting. He discovered that every hunter memorized the stars. Every child could track footprints across solid rock. Even their smallest mistakes became lessons. No one laughed when someone failed. They simply trained harder together. For the first time since leaving Earth, Ethan felt like he belonged somewhere. One evening, Rin led Ethan to the edge of the valley. Thousands of glowing insects floated through the air like tiny stars. The forest looked magical. Rin sat quietly beside him. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan nodded. "What is Earth like?" Ethan smiled. "It depends where you are. We have frozen mountains, hot deserts, cities that never sleep, oceans larger than some planets." Rin listened with fascination. "You miss it." Ethan looked toward the stars. "Every day." "Then why don't you leave?" Ethan laughed softly. "I can't. The academy would never allow it." Rin became serious. "My people would." Ethan looked at him. "What do you mean?" Rin's voice became quiet. "You are free here. No one is forcing you to stay." The words hit Ethan harder than any punch. For months, no one had treated him like a prisoner, because to the hunters, he wasn't one. The following morning, the village alarm echoed through the valley. 3 long horn blasts. Every hunter grabbed a weapon. Children disappeared into underground shelters. Within seconds, the peaceful village became a fortress. Kaler pointed toward the northern cliffs. Shadow wolves. Ethan had heard stories. Nobody had ever seen one and survived. A moment later, the monsters appeared. They stood almost 10 feet tall. Their bodies resembled wolves covered in black stone. Rows of bone spikes ran along their backs. Their eyes glowed deep crimson. There weren't many, only 5, but every hunter immediately formed battle lines. Ethan noticed something strange. The hunters weren't afraid. They respected the creatures. Kaler quietly spoke. They hunt because they must. We fight because we must. Never hate what simply wishes to live. The shadow wolves attacked. The ground exploded beneath their paws. One hunter was thrown into the air. Another barely blocked a crushing bite. Ethan saw a young child frozen with fear near the edge of the village. One wolf changed direction. It wasn't charging the warriors anymore. It was charging the child. Without thinking, Ethan sprinted. He reached the child just as the wolf leaped. Instead of attacking, he grabbed the child and rolled down the hillside. The wolf crashed into a tree instead. Kaler saw the opening. His spear struck like lightning. The beast retreated into the forest with the others. The battle ended almost as quickly as it had begun. That evening, the hunters gathered around a massive fire. No celebration, only silence. Kaler stood. He looked toward Ethan. Today, the human protected one of our children. Every warrior looked at Ethan. An elderly huntress stepped forward. She carried a necklace made from polished beast teeth. She carefully placed it around Ethan's neck. Rin smiled. It is called the Guardian's Tooth. We only give it to those who protect the tribe. Ethan looked down at the necklace. I don't deserve this. The elderly huntress gently shook her head. You didn't protect us because you wanted a reward. That is exactly why you deserve it. For the first time, the entire tribe struck one fist against their chest. Not as soldiers, as family. Hundreds of light years away, Commander Vorik stood inside the Academy's war room. A holographic image of the hunter village rotated before him. Every pathway, every watchtower, every hidden entrance, all visible. One officer frowned. How did we map their city? Vorik smiled coldly. The human. He never knew. The officer looked confused. You planted a tracker? Vorik nodded. Inside the Academy medical injector. The one he used to save the hunter. Silence filled the room. Another commander slowly spoke. So, the human wasn't sent there to die. Vorik shook his head. No. He was sent to lead us straight to them. The room fell silent. On the holographic map, a red symbol appeared above the Hunter Valley. Target locked. Far away, Ethan sat beside the fire, laughing with Rin and the hunter children. He had no idea that every laugh, every step, every moment he spent with his new family was bringing an entire invasion fleet closer to their home. 3 months passed. The seasons changed. The endless green valley slowly transformed. Bright blue flowers covered the forest floor. Ancient rivers swelled with fresh rain. The giant trees grew new silver leaves that shimmered beneath the moonlight. To Ethan, this place no longer felt like exile. Felt like home. Every sunrise began the same way. Before dawn, Kaler was already waiting at the training grounds. Without speaking, he tossed Ethan a spear. The two warriors immediately began fighting. Their movements had become almost identical. Attack, block, counter, adapt. Neither held back anymore. The hunters watched in silence. Months earlier, the human had struggled to survive a single lesson. Now, even Kaler had to fight seriously. After one long exchange, Ethan spun beneath Kaler's spear and gently tapped the hunter leader's chest with the wooden end of his own weapon. Silence. Then, Rin burst into laughter. He touched the leader. The younger hunters cheered. Kaler looked at the place where Ethan's spear had landed. Then he slowly smiled. You finally stopped fighting like a soldier. Ethan lowered his weapon. What do you mean? Kaler stepped closer. Soldiers follow training. Hunters follow instinct. You have finally learned the difference. Life in the village became peaceful once again. Children no longer hid when Ethan walked by. Instead, they chased after him. Brother Ethan, tell us another story about Earth. One little hunter climbed onto a rock. Is it true humans have oceans bigger than cities? Ethan laughed. Bigger than entire countries. The children gasped. Another asked, and is it true humans keep dangerous animals as pets? Ethan smiled. Sometimes. The children looked horrified. You are definitely crazy. Even Kaler couldn't hide a quiet laugh. That evening, the tribe gathered around the great fire. It was the oldest hunter tradition. No training, no hunting, only stories. Every warrior spoke about someone who had sacrificed for the tribe. When Ethan's turn came, he remained silent. Kaler noticed. You have no story? Ethan stared into the flames. I do. I just don't know if it's worth telling. Kaler nodded. Every story is worth hearing. Ethan took a slow breath. When I was 12, my father was a firefighter. He taught me something before every rescue. The village became completely silent. He always said, being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means someone else's life becomes more important than your fear. Ethan looked around the fire. I didn't understand him then, but I do now. Nobody spoke. The hunters had never heard words quite like that. Kaler quietly repeated them. Someone else's life becomes more important than your fear. He looked at his warriors. That is the heart of a hunter. Far above the peaceful valley, something moved beyond the clouds. Not one ship, not 10, hundreds. A massive invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace without lights. Silent, invisible to ordinary scanners. Inside the flagship, Commander Vorik stood before a giant window. Thousands of warships stretched across space behind him. An officer stepped forward. Fleet is in position. Vorik nodded. The Hunter Valley? Completely surrounded. No vessel can escape. Another officer hesitated. What about the human cadet? Vorik didn't even look at him. He served his purpose. His survival is no longer necessary. Back in the village, the hunters noticed something strange. Every bird suddenly stopped singing. The wind disappeared. Even the insects became silent. Kaler slowly stood. His eyes narrowed toward the sky. Something is wrong. Rin looked around nervously. I don't hear the forest. Before anyone could react, a deafening explosion shattered the silence. Boom! The entire mountain shook. Children screamed. A giant beam of blue energy crashed into the northern cliffs. The explosion lit up the night sky. Pieces of burning rock rained across the valley. Another beam struck. Then another. Within seconds, the peaceful village became chaos. Hunters! To your positions! War horns echoed through the valley. Every warrior grabbed a weapon. Parents carried frightened children toward underground shelters. Ethan looked toward the sky. His heart froze. Warships, hundreds of them, hovering above the clouds. Their engines glowed bright red. Academy ships, Alliance ships, his own people. A transmission echoed across the valley. Commander Vorik's face appeared as a giant hologram above the battlefield. His voice boomed across the mountains. Attention! This operation has been authorized by the Galactic Council. The elite hunters are hereby declared a hostile military force. They have kidnapped a Galactic Academy cadet. They have refused lawful surrender. They will now be eliminated. Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. Kidnapped? That was a lie. He had stayed by choice. Kaler looked toward Ethan. You knew about this? Ethan turned immediately. No, I swear I didn't. For one painful second, the hunters looked uncertain. Not angry, just hurt. Ethan felt his stomach twist. Then Rin stepped forward. I believe him. Several others nodded. Kaler never took his eyes off Ethan. Finally, he placed one hand on the human's shoulder. You have never lied to us. I will not begin doubting you today. Ethan's eyes filled with emotion. Thank you. Another explosion ripped through the valley. Entire trees burst into flames. A bridge collapsed into the river below. The invasion had begun. Dropships poured from the sky. Thousands of Alliance soldiers landed around the valley. Heavy combat walkers crushed everything in their path. Energy cannons fired without mercy. One terrified hunter child stumbled out from a collapsing shelter. A falling tree crashed toward him. Without thinking, Ethan sprinted forward. He shoved the child out of the way. The burning tree slammed onto Ethan's back. He collapsed beneath its weight. Pain exploded through his body. Before the soldiers could fire again, Kaler roared. The hunter leader lifted the burning tree with both hands. Rin pulled Ethan free. "You idiot! You almost got yourself killed." Ethan struggled to breathe. "I've been called worse." Even in the middle of disaster, Rin laughed. The hunters quickly regrouped. Kaler gathered every warrior. "There are too many. We cannot win by standing still." One elder looked toward Ethan. "You should leave." Ethan frowned. "What? This war is not yours." Another hunter nodded. "You owe us nothing." Kaler stepped forward. "You came here as an outsider. You became our brother. We will not ask you to die beside us." Ethan looked around. He saw frightened children, burning homes, the necklace around his neck. The people who had fed him, protected him, believed in him when nobody else had. He slowly stood. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "My academy abandoned me. My own commander used me. You gave me a home. You trusted me." He picked up his spear. "I was born on Earth." He looked directly at Kaler. "But I choose my family." Silence. Kaler smiled with pride. Then he struck one fist against his chest. Every hunter copied him, one by one, until the entire valley echoed with a single sound. Thump, thump, thump. The human was no longer a guest. He was one of them. High above the battlefield, Commander Vorik watched through the flagship's main screen. He smiled coldly. "Excellent." The human chose the hunters. An officer looked confused. "Wasn't that the worst outcome?" Vorik slowly shook his head. "No. Now, the Galactic Council will never believe he was innocent. He has officially become an enemy of the Alliance." Vorik leaned forward. "Prepare the second wave. I don't just want the hunters destroyed. I want the human brought back. Alive." His amber eyes narrowed. "So the entire galaxy can watch. What happens to traitors?" Far below, Ethan stood beside Kaler. The hunter warriors formed a line across the burning valley. Behind them, their families waited. An entire invasion army. The odds were impossible. Kaler looked at Ethan one last time. "Brother, do humans have a plan for surviving battles like this?" Ethan stared at the burning jungle. Then, a slow smile appeared on his face. "Actually, we do." His eyes shifted toward the ancient forest surrounding the invading army. "They think they're invading your home. They have no idea. The jungle is about to hunt them." The first rays of sunlight broke through the smoke. The beautiful valley was almost unrecognizable. Ancient trees had been reduced to blackened stumps. The river carried broken weapons instead of leaves. Smoke drifted through the forest like dark ghosts. The Alliance believed the hunters had already lost. They were wrong, very wrong. Inside a hidden cave beneath the valley, the remaining hunters gathered around Ethan. Nearly every warrior carried wounds. Some had bandaged arms. Others leaned against stone walls to stay standing. No one complained. No one talked about surrender. Commander Vorik had expected a frightened tribe. Instead, he had created a family with nothing left to lose. Kaler looked toward Ethan. "You said humans have a plan." Ethan knelt beside the cave floor. Using a piece of charcoal, he began drawing a map. Not of the village, of the jungle. He marked rivers, steep cliffs, hidden caves, animal trails. Then, he smiled. "We don't beat stronger enemies by fighting their battle. We make them fight ours." The hunters leaned closer. Ethan pointed toward a narrow valley. The enemy has tanks. They'll come through here. One hunter frowned. We cannot stop machines. Ethan shook his head. We don't stop them. We trap them. He pointed toward another area. These cliffs are unstable. One explosion, and thousands of tons of rock fall onto the road. Rin's eyes widened. You want the mountain to fight for us? Ethan nodded. Exactly. Kaler slowly smiled. The jungle is our greatest warrior. Within minutes, every hunter was moving, not toward the enemy, away from them. Hidden ropes were stretched between ancient trees. Massive logs were balanced high above narrow paths. Sharp wooden stakes disappeared beneath leaves. Huge boulders were carefully loosened. Even children helped carry supplies through secret tunnels. No one wasted a second. The jungle itself was becoming a weapon. Several kilometers away, Alliance General Soren studied a holographic map. The hunters are retreating. One officer smiled. They're scared. General Soren nodded confidently. Advance. Finish this before sunset. Thousands of soldiers marched into the forest. Heavy combat walkers followed. Massive hover tanks floated just above the ground. Everything looked perfect. Until the first soldier disappeared. He stepped forward. The ground beneath him suddenly collapsed. He vanished into a deep pit hidden beneath leaves. Before anyone could react, a loud crack echoed above. Gigantic logs swung from the trees. They smashed into the front line. Soldiers flew through the air. The formation instantly broke apart. Ambush! Energy weapons fired wildly into the trees. But there was nothing to shoot. The hunters had already disappeared. High above, Vorik watched through satellite cameras. They're using traps. An officer laughed. Primitive. Vorik didn't laugh. No. Dangerous. The Alliance pushed deeper. Exactly as Ethan wanted. Every kilometer became worse. Ropes pulled soldiers into the air. Hidden pits swallowed vehicles. Explosive plants burst when stepped on. One combat walker fired its cannon. The blast shook the mountain. For one terrifying second, nothing happened. Then, crack, the entire cliff began to move. Thousands of tons of rock crashed down the mountainside. The enormous hover tanks vanished beneath an avalanche of stone. Dust filled the valley. When it cleared, the road no longer existed. General Soren stared in disbelief. They used the mountain against us. Elsewhere, a hunter scout raced through the trees. He reached Ethan. They've stopped advancing. Ethan shook his head. No, they're regrouping. He looked toward the sky. Vorik isn't stupid. He'll change tactics. Almost immediately, a loud roar echoed above. Dropships, dozens of them. Instead of attacking through the jungle, they were flying directly over it. Rin looked worried. They'll land behind us. Ethan smiled. That's exactly where I want them. The hunters quickly climbed into enormous trees. Not to hide, to wait. The dropships descended into a large clearing. The rear doors opened. Hundreds of Alliance soldiers rushed outside. Everything seemed quiet. Too quiet. General Soren smiled. The hunters have abandoned the area. Suddenly, a sharp whistle echoed through the forest. Every hunter looked toward Ethan. He nodded once. Now, hundreds of long vines were cut simultaneously. The giant trees that had been held under tension snapped forward. Like enormous whips, they smashed into the landed dropships. Metal twisted. Engines exploded. Ships crashed into one another. Before the soldiers could recover, hunter warriors dropped silently from the branches above. They didn't charge. They struck, then disappeared again. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes. When it ended, the clearing was empty. Only broken dropships remained. The hunters had vanished. The Alliance soldiers looked around in panic. It was like they came out of the trees. No, they were the trees. Hours later, Commander Vorik received another report. General Soren has lost nearly 40% of his forces. The bridge fell silent. One officer whispered, "Against a few hundred hunters?" Vorik slowly clenched his fists. This isn't their victory. It is the humans. He zoomed in on Ethan's image. He thinks like prey, but fights like a predator. Vorok's eyes narrowed. I'll deal with him myself. That evening, the hunters celebrated nothing. Too many friends had been lost. Too many homes had burned. Ethan quietly sat beside a small fire. Rin walked over carrying 2 wooden cups filled with warm herbal tea. You should be happy. We won today. Ethan stared into the flames. No, we survived today. There is a difference. Rin sat beside him. My father always said, the strongest warriors smile after battle. Ethan slowly shook his head. My father taught me something different. What? The strongest warriors hate war the most. Rin looked into the fire. For the first time, he truly understood humans. Before sunrise, a loud horn echoed through the valley. Not a hunter horn, an alliance horn. Every warrior looked toward the eastern ridge. One enormous dropship landed alone. Its front door slowly opened. Commander Vorok stepped onto the battlefield. He wore black combat armor covered in battle scars. Behind him, no army followed. He walked alone, confident, calm, certain. His amplified voice echoed through the valley. Ethan Ryder, I know you're listening. The forest became silent. Ethan stepped out from the trees, spear in one hand, hunter necklace around his neck. Vorok smiled coldly. I trained you. I gave you purpose. And this, he pointed toward the hunter village, is how you repay me? Ethan looked directly into his former commander's eyes. You never trained me. You tried to break me. Vorok laughed. And yet, you still became exactly what I wanted. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Vorok raised one finger. You united the hunters. You revealed every secret path, every defense, every weakness. He smiled. You made this invasion possible. For a brief moment, Ethan's heart sank. Then Kaler stepped beside him. No, he looked at Vorok. You invaded because of your greed. You simply used our brother as an excuse. Vorok's smile disappeared. He slowly drew his enormous energy blade. Blue lightning danced across its edge. I grow tired of speeches. He pointed the weapon toward Ethan. Tomorrow, I will kill you myself. He turned back toward his dropship. And when you fall, so will every hunter who ever trusted you. The dropship lifted into the sky. Silence returned. Ethan watched until it disappeared. Then he tightened his grip on his spear. Kaler stood beside him. The final hunt begins. Ethan nodded. Then let's make sure. The hunter becomes the hunted. The final sunrise arrived in silence. No birds sang. No wind moved through the valley. Even the ancient forest seemed to be holding its breath. The hunters stood together at the edge of their homeland. Every warrior wore scars. Every face showed exhaustion. But no one stepped back. Behind them, their families waited. Children held their mothers' hands. The elders quietly watched the horizon. No one cried. They all knew. Today would decide the future of their people. Far across the valley, the Alliance army assembled one final time. Rows of tanks stretched across the open ground. Gunships hovered above the mountains. Thousands of soldiers stood in perfect formation. At the center, Commander Vorok walked forward alone. His black armor reflected the morning light. His energy blade hummed with deadly power. He stopped halfway across the battlefield. Ethan Ryder, come forward. Ethan looked at Kaler. The hunter leader gave a single nod. This battle belongs to you. Ethan stepped away from the hunters. He walked alone across the burned valley. Every soldier watched. Every hunter remained silent. When Ethan finally stopped, only a few meters separated him from Vorok. Vorok smiled. I gave you a chance to become great. You chose savages instead. Ethan calmly shook his head. They are more civilized than anyone inside your academy. A few Alliance soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Vorok's smile disappeared. You still believe this is about the hunters? He laughed quietly. It never was. He pointed toward the mountains. Hidden beneath this valley is one of the largest deposits of stellar core crystals in the galaxy. The hunters refused to surrender it. So I made sure they looked like the enemy. The truth struck everyone like lightning. Even some Alliance officers looked horrified. Thousands had died, not to stop dangerous warriors, but because of greed. Suddenly, one young Alliance lieutenant stepped forward. "Commander, is that true?" Vorik slowly turned. Without hesitation, he drew a small sidearm and fired. The lieutenant collapsed instantly. Silence. Vorik looked at the remaining soldiers. "Anyone else have questions?" No one answered. Fear replaced loyalty. Ethan looked around the battlefield. For the first time, he realized something. Many of these soldiers weren't evil. They had simply been lied to, just like he had. Vorik raised his energy blade. No more delays. He charged. The ground exploded beneath his feet. Ethan barely blocked the first strike with his hunter spear. The impact shattered the wooden shaft. The spear broke into 2 pieces. Vorik smiled. "Your new family taught you many things, but they forgot one lesson." He swung again. "You cannot defeat power." Ethan rolled aside, picked up a fallen hunter blade, and stood once more. "No," he answered calmly, "but power can defeat itself." The duel became a blur. Steel met energy. Strike after strike echoed across the valley. Vorik was stronger, faster, more experienced. Every blow forced Ethan backwards. Finally, Vorik landed a crushing kick. Ethan crashed into a broken stone pillar. Blood ran down his forehead. His vision blurred. Across the battlefield, Rin tried to run toward him. Kaler stopped him. He must finish this himself. Vorik slowly approached. "You disappoint me." He lifted his blade for the final strike. Then, a terrified scream echoed across the battlefield. Everyone turned. A burning Alliance dropship had lost control. It crashed toward a group of frightened hunter children, and Alliance medics trapped beneath fallen debris. Both sides were directly in its path. There was no time. Everyone froze, except Ethan. Without thinking, he sprinted, not toward Vorik, toward the children, toward the trapped medics. He pushed 2 hunter children aside, then grabbed one injured Alliance medic. "Move!" The medic stared at him in disbelief. "Why are you helping me?" Ethan pulled him to safety. "Because you're alive." The burning dropship slammed into the ground behind them. A massive explosion shook the valley. Flames rose high into the sky. When the smoke cleared, every child was alive. Every medic had survived. Hunters and Alliance soldiers alike stared at Ethan. He had saved both sides. Without hesitation. Without asking who they served. Kaler slowly smiled. "So that is what makes humans different." Vorik roared with fury. "You fool! They are your enemies." Ethan turned. "No, they're people." The battlefield fell silent. Even the Alliance soldiers lowered their weapons. One by one, more rifles touched the ground. Then another. Then another. General Soren looked around. "We were told these people were monsters." He looked at Ethan. "But monsters don't save strangers." He removed his helmet, then dropped his weapon. "I will not fight this war anymore." Hundreds of soldiers followed. Then thousands. Within minutes, nearly the entire Alliance army refused to continue. Vorik looked around in disbelief. "You are all traitors." No one moved. He was finally alone. Consumed by rage, Vorik activated the emergency protocol inside his armor. Warning lights flashed across his suit. Its reactor overloaded. Power doubled, then tripled. The armor began tearing itself apart. Kaler's eyes widened. "He'll destroy the whole valley." Vorik laughed wildly. "If I cannot win, no one leaves alive." A massive sphere of unstable energy formed around him. It was seconds from exploding. Ethan looked around. Thousands of innocent lives. Hunters, Alliance soldiers, children. There was only one chance. He charged, ignoring the pain, ignoring the fear. At the last second, He slammed his broken spear into the damaged reactor on Vorik's armor. The unstable energy reversed. Instead of exploding outward, collapsed inward. A blinding flash covered the battlefield. For one endless moment, no one could see, no one could hear. Then, silence. When the light faded, Vorik's armor lay shattered across the ground. The commander himself was unconscious. Alive, defeated. Ethan collapsed to one knee, breathing heavily. He could have killed Vorik. He hadn't. Hours later, a fleet of Galactic Council ships arrived. Unlike Vorik's army, they came with no weapons drawn. The council members walked through the ruined valley. They spoke with the hunters, with Alliance soldiers, with survivors. One by one, the truth emerged. Every lie, every secret, every crime. Commander Vorik was arrested. General Soren willingly testified against him. Operation Iron Fang was declared illegal. The invasion was over. Several days later, the valley began to heal. Children laughed once more. Homes were rebuilt. Trees were replanted. The forest slowly came back to life. At sunset, the entire hunter tribe gathered before the great fire. Kaler stood in the center. He held an ancient necklace unlike any Ethan had seen. It was made from silver bone and a single glowing crystal. For over 1,000 years, this honor has belonged only to hunters born in this valley. He stepped closer. But today, our history changes. He gently placed the necklace around Ethan's neck. You came here as a punishment. You stayed because of love. You fought because of honor. You protected our children, and even those who came to destroy us. Kaler placed one fist over his heart. From this day forward, you are no longer our guest. You are no longer an outsider. You are Hunter brother. Every warrior struck one fist against their chest. Thump, thump, thump. The sound echoed through the valley. Even the Alliance soldiers copied the gesture. General Soren smiled. The galaxy spent centuries fearing the elite hunters. He looked at Ethan. It turns out, they were simply waiting for someone worthy enough to call family. Months later, the Galactic Academy reopened. A new class of cadets stood in the central hall. Humans, hunters, aliens from dozens of worlds. Training together, learning together. No one stood alone anymore. Above the entrance, the Academy had carved a new inscription into black stone. It wasn't written by politicians or admirals. It was written by those who had survived the valley. It read, "Strength earns victory, compassion earns legends." And beneath those words was the name of the first human ever accepted by the elite hunters. Ethan Ryder, narrator's final words. They sent one human to be hunted by the galaxy's greatest warriors. They believed fear would destroy him. Instead, kindness made him family. Courage made him a leader. And compassion changed an entire civilization. Because the greatest victory in human history wasn't won by conquering enemies. It was won by turning them into friends. The end.